there's some stuff going down that I think is very weird. And I feel like I'm a little nervous that Bitcoin and digital assets are being used as a catch-all. Last night, there was some earnings of like GameStop's just one of the, just bringing up a name, a blast from the past. GameStop hardly.
Something that happened.
Yeah, GameStop since the meme stock time, whatever, doesn't trade a ton. Most of us don't do much in there.
Doesn't hit the meters.
It's just another crappy stock. Let's go to that way. But last night, so GameStop decides, okay, well, our numbers are, whatever. We're right in line with what they're supposed to be. And we made a little bit more money than we thought, but our revenues were down, all the same crap that firms usually say when it comes to earnings. But then they say, but you know what? We're going to invest all our free cash in Bitcoin. Like, that's the catch-all.
Okay.
Instead of.
But that's what IG does. That's what Microsoft. That's what Pfizer. Anybody with a little cash on their balance sheet.
Well, actually, that's not what anybody does, really. It's just what a few companies, Tesla did a little bit, but mostly, it's kind of the MicroStrategy playbook more than anything else. And Ryan Cohen and those guys, the CEO and stuff, they're just essentially taking the MicroStrategy playbook and saying, everything that we've got lying around, instead of reinvesting in the business, instead of innovating, instead of doing anything else, we're going to invest it in an asset that we feel like will outperform what we could do in whatever industry, like whatever our industry is considered. And I'm not sure exactly what you determine GameStop to be, like a retail stock, a gaming stock, whatever it is. But instead of all that, we're going to essentially take all the money we have that doesn't go into running the business, and we're just going to buy digital assets. And hopefully the digital assets, because they have a much higher expected move and they have asymmetric upside, will take this company to different places. And then we can raise more money and buy more Bitcoin. And it's a game plan that worked for MicroStrategies. It's a game plan that's worked for everybody who's bought digital assets so far. So let's keep buying digital assets. And under the current administration, digital assets seem to be the way to go. And to me, I can't think of a more dangerous approach to building a business than that. Like, I can't think of a more dangerous approach than a dumbass CEO who decides, rather than doing what I was hired to do, which is to turn this company around, which the reason I took the job as a CEO is because people believe that I can, with whatever's here, I can create something out of that. And rather than do that, I'm going to go out and you're going to pay me a lot of money to go out and buy Bitcoin. And we're going to trade at a huge premium to the price of Bitcoin because we're giving you a different vehicle for buying Bitcoin. There's nothing, it's not like strategic. It's like, we're just going to buy it.
It's a scheme. They would call it a scheme.
So the stock is up, whatever, $3 today, or 10%. So you get a 10% boost in your stock price. Now, what's interesting about that is when you're let's just see what their market cap is. I have no idea off the top of my head. Stock's up about $3 today. Market cap in there. Market cap is $11 billion. So it's a $27 stock. Stock's up $280, 10% move. So you get $1 billion. You get $1 billion valuation boost for announcing that you are going to buy Bitcoin. Okay. Now, there's no math model. There's zero. It's not even possible with whatever cash they have, whether it's $1 billion, $500 million, $2 billion. I have no idea how much cash they have, but can't be that much money. But with the amount of money they have and the premium that was just added, that 10% premium onto the stock price, there's no math model that works for having you buy Bitcoin as to justify or rationalize a 10% jump in stock price. In fact, Bitcoin agrees. Bitcoin's down, let's say, $1,500 today. So, so 1.5%, 2%. So the marketplace knows it's a joke, but their stock's up 10%. So it makes the arb or the ratio even worse. I guess my point is we have reached a level of Bitcoin / digital asset insanity that is pushing to limits that now I think are becoming fairly dangerous. Also, there was an announcement this morning that Trump's company, whatever, Trump Media or Trump Coin, whatever it is, the one that Donald Trump and his family, his immediate family, own over 60% of, is going to launch a stablecoin. I read the article in the Wall Street Journal, so this is not some crazy left-wing publication or whatever it is. The Wall Street Journal outlined it very clearly. And essentially the discussion was, should the leader of the free world and the president of the United States be able to create a stable coin, essentially a currency that people will use, and be able to profit off that when it's probably the most conflicted business that any U.S. president has ever been in the history of this country. Started during their presidency, to use the presidency. And what does that mean for the regulatory?
The Wall Street Journal also made the point that the regulator of the currency is the issuer of the currency. So it's one of the, because that's
my next point. That's my next point.
Yeah.
Because so the risk here is that when the regulator is the issuer, who is going to protect the consumer? And how come nobody has a problem with any of this?
But I think I do. Well, first of all, in reverse order, most of us have a problem with this.
Okay, well, it doesn't seem to be. I'm not reading a lot about problems.
The people that have the problem have no power. The beautiful thing, Donald Trump has proven. I was talking to a friend of mine earlier today. Donald Trump may be the single greatest, like, some people have power, some people don't have power. Some people know how to use the power they have very productively to get more power, to get more of what they want. Some people have a lot of power but don't know how to use it that well to get things or do things. I don't know that there's another person on earth who's better at using power than to get what he wants than Donald Trump. He may not be the smartest man. He may not be the kindest man. He may not be the most innovative man. But with whatever power he has, going back decades, no one has proven more skillful at using whatever power he has to utilize it to get more power, up to the point where now he is not only the president of the United States, he's the president of the United States for a second term with a mindlessly idiotic cabinet that is completely loyal to him, unlike the first time around, a completely compliant Republican majority in Congress, where he's now issuing crypto assets. He's issuing securities, we'll call it, I guess. He's the biggest regulator of a new form of securities, and he's also angling to be one of the big issuer of the very same security that he's in the process of legalizing or are further mainstreaming. I won't say legalizing, but he's sort of normalizing, which is a brilliant use of power to get him as much he wants. I think Donald Trump
hold it. Stop for 1 second. But just stop for 1 second. Is it a brilliant use of power or is it going to be the end of like there is a very thin line. This is America, okay? Even in places, you'd have to go all the way to North Korea where there's unchecked abuses of power. In America, the actual quote from the Journal today is, "We haven't had a president in recent memory ever sign legislation that could directly affect his financial interests like Trump has." Okay, it's never happened before. What he did with this whole stablecoin movement, among other things.
It shouldn't happen in any country ever.
They go on to say it's a clear violation of ethics norm. These are quotes from the Wall Street Journal. The point here is, at how far can he push before it all crumbles down on top of him? See, I think that
define crumbles down.
You get too greedy.
Elon Musk.
You get too greedy. They shut you down.
His goal is to be richer. I think he wants to be the world's richest man. I believe that is his goal, and I believe that the way to become the world's richest man is through crypto. That's the only thing that could get him to 500 billion, 600 billion, a number that's bigger than Elon. There's nothing else. He's not going to do it with golf courses or hotel rooms or whatever. So what's crumbling down?
Not right now.
If
nothing.
America loses.
Nothing's crumbling down right now. But if you push too far, everybody that pushes too far, things come crumbling down. That's the way the system works. If you push too far, everybody gets normalized. And Trump has not been normalized yet. And I think that's what happens next step. I think you can only abuse the system. You can only push so far when it comes to ethics. At some point, somebody steps up. Unless you think, otherwise, I don't even understand where we live anymore if that's not the case. I just can't imagine that that's not the case.
Well, but you brought up a bunch of interesting topics in this sort of discussion. So if I could just revisit a few of them. Because the last one is almost unanswerable. Your point is that this is an existential risk to the integrity of America. Well, not even your point. The Wall Street Journal's point, which we agree with, is that this is an existential risk to the integrity of America, and there must be some point at which Donald Trump has gone too far, and there are some consequences for the madness. But those are kind of the two biggies. But what's interesting for me in listening to you, whether it's so first of all, going back to GameStop. As you know, over the past 2 decades, one of the sort of popular actions by CEOs is stock buybacks. And the big criticism of stock buybacks is you're the CEO of this big company, whatever the company is, some public company with lots of money and lots of things, employees, resources, whatever. And your job is to innovate and grow and create new markets and go to India, go to Brazil, to create a new mousetrap, whatever it is. Okay. And instead of doing that, the most innovative thing you can think of to do is buy back your own stock. Like if the most innovative thing you can think of to do is buy back your own stock, you probably shouldn't be the CEO of this company. That's been a long-standing criticism of stock buybacks. And so buying Bitcoin a la GameStop is like the modern version of the stock buyback, where I'm the CEO of this company. I don't have any creative or innovative ideas on how to create a future for this company, so I'm just going to buy digital assets, right? Or Donald Trump wants to be the world's richest man, more rich than Elon Musk, and the only possible way to do that is to control a giant a section of the cryptocurrency markets, because nothing else can create $500 billion, in a weekend, other than crypto. You also said that you felt like that there was more fragility, that you're more nervous about crypto now than at any time in the past, if I understood you correctly.
Yes, because, and I'll be brief, but I'll tell you the reason being is that this is going to backfire, because from if I was a legislator and I was concerned before, I'm super concerned now. And you cannot, you have to have, you have an obligation to protect the consumer. And there's no check here. And so I think the regulations are going to come back stronger than ever and it's actually going to hurt the business. Like, you can only take down the regulations so far. At some point, you have to protect the consumer. You know, we have had stable coins that have failed because of not the right collateral, you know, just fraud, ineffectiveness, just with the, you know, with whatever they were holding against the underlying currency. I mean, Terra comes to mind, but there's others too. I just don't think this can be virtually unregulated or regulated by the issuer. It's not going to fly. And as such, I just feel like the backlash could send the whole thing crumbling down.
What is the whole thing? When you say, you mean the crypto market?
Not necessarily just the crypto market.
You said the whole thing tumbling down. What is the whole thing in that?
The whole digital asset space is very fragile, and it survived the first wave of stablecoin failures. It survived the first wave of ineffective exchanges that were, you know, opened themselves.
Sam Bankman-Fried.
It survived Sam Bankman-Fried. It survived CZ. I mean, the Trump stablecoin is actually a partnership with Binance and CZ, who's hoping for a Trump pardon to be able to, you know, run this whole thing. I mean, you're talking about basically you're essentially getting in bed with criminals. I mean, it's mind-boggling, and nobody cares. It's absolutely mind-boggling. And, you know, I mean, you're doing business right now. You're creating a stablecoin with somebody who's in jail for fraud and for taking customer funds.
And you're the president of the United States.
And you're the president of the United States. And there's no separation. You are involved on every level.
What's the problem?
Well, the problem is this is not Russia. The problem is this is not how things work here. You know,
maybe it is.
If it is, so that's the point. If it is, we probably have much bigger problems than we realize. If it is, then GameStop at putting all their money in Bitcoin is only the tip of the iceberg. I mean, this is the same group. You know, these guys, these are 6 degrees of separation. They're all tied together. These are not strangers from one another. These are all contributors. These are all party players. This is a very partisan group.
They're all in the same Signal chat room together.
They're all in cahoots. Yes. And the reason that they've been emboldened, they've been given this kind of this crazy green light. And I think that that's very risky. Anytime in our history when anybody's been given that kind of a green light, it scares me as a trader, as an investor. I'm long this stuff, you know, and it scares the crap out of me right now. Like, I kind of feel like I want to sell everything. You know, we're in the process.
But walk me through the future scenario where you wish you sold everything. What's the risk? You're saying, you're basically, I mean, what I feel like you're saying but not saying is you're worried about a crisis of confidence in the integrity of the American political and economic system.
Well, let me ask you a question. Has there ever been a new asset class that hasn't suffered a pullback or a threat or a crash?
No, of course, but
yeah, that's all.
Sure. But when you say sell everything, you mean get out of crypto because you think crypto is
sure.
just about to get pounded. You're not suggesting all assets are.
No.
You're just saying the fact that Trump is noodling around here like a fool, and GameStop's CEO can't think of anything better to do than to buy Bitcoin, and that the Bitcoin's reaction to that news is to go down, not up, which is another flag.
No. I'm really just saying that Trump's pushing the limits of consumer protection and pushing the limits of consumer protection and of presidential ethics to a level we've never seen before. And because of that, there's just a lot of risk in that marketplace. Like, we're about to accept stablecoins at Tasty for people to fund their accounts. I'm fine with that. I feel confident that most are, we're in pretty good shape. And I think it's a very fair way to eliminate fees and do things like that. But I don't think we should be supporting stablecoins that are owned and underwritten, the entities, by people that run the regulators.
I mean, obviously, that's a statement of the obvious. The point is that the risk is that you're suggesting. Here's my thing. I feel like most of the people that are in or around crypto, whether they know it consciously or unconsciously, whatever, they know that it's not. This is not the same thing as owning, I don't know.
There's a
Ford
reason.
Motor Company
There's
stuff,
a reason
or
that
U.S. bonds. Like, they know this is a scam, okay, and it's everybody's in on it. The whole thing is a joke from the beginning. One of them, and the risk right now is that it's being, like, we all know it's a joke, but it's a joke that's working. So don't F it up by being so brazenly, fraudulent with it that everybody catches on. That basically that there's a crisis of confidence, not in America and not in financial assets, but it breeds a crisis of confidence in crypto writ large. That's a better way to summarize it.
Conflicts are very dangerous in America. There's a reason that Steve Wynn couldn't buy a piece of the Las Vegas Raiders. Okay, I'm not suggesting that Steve Wynn was going to bet on or against the Raiders. Okay, but we don't want casino owners. Even if he still owns the casino, we don't want casino. I just can't think of anybody else that owns a casino.
Yeah.
We don't want casino owners owning sports teams. Okay, because I think that's a big conflict. That's what everybody thinks. Okay, it's the same reason why we don't want baseball players betting on baseball games, even if they bet on their own team. It's the same reason we don't even want sportscasters like Tom Brady being an owner of a team, just because we don't even want it to sound like it's a conflict in the TV booth. But yet, for some insane reason, you can be president of the United States and create your own currency that's backed by U.S. treasuries. I mean, we're talking about conflicts at levels like, I don't even know where to start. Like, it goes down to third grade soccer. We have protections that we, like who coaches the team and all that. But yet at a certain level, it's just like we've reached a level of insanity. I don't know what else to say. Like, there is zero regard for ethics.
Who would intervene? The SEC? Who would the theoretical check on this be?
Well, the theoretical check would be I guess it would be the SEC, but that's not going to happen because the new chairman of the SEC is, is boy.
In the deal. He's in the deal.
He's in the deal. Right. Nobody's going to say anything.
What about the Supreme Court? I'm just saying, structurally, where would the intervention be if you had a functioning government?
Well, if you think about it, the only person in all outside of, the opposing party, the only person that's even remotely stood up to Trump on anything so far has been the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, who's basically said, lay off the judges and, don't pull your crap. Or there's, don't mess with the judicial system the way don't say the things you've been saying. But I'm glad that at least somebody's got, can say something. But it's embarrassing that we have an entire one half of all our elected officials can't see that there's a conflict here or are afraid to step up. This is the scary part.
Would you get short? Would you short Bitcoin?
It's a very difficult short, but at this point,
Forgetting the mechanics, just as a matter of sentiment, would you rather be long, neutral, or short? For setting aside mechanical barriers at the moment.
I mean,
in other words, is this so bad that you?
No. I've been long Bitcoin for 10 years. I'm not selling it now. Like I've just owned it, so it's part. I've owned a little bit of Bitcoin, tiny bit of Bitcoin for 10 straight years. I'm not going to sell it, and ETH and everything else. I'm not selling it, but I watch the industry and I'm far less interested in buying altcoins. I'm far less interested in all different aspects of digital assets than I was. I'm very bullish on the future of digitization. I'm very bullish on tokenization. I'm very bullish on various forms of blockchain because the technology piece to this is fascinating to me. I just don't like the abuse. I don't think anybody does. And I don't like,
no, of course.
I don't like even if there isn't abuse, I don't like the perception of abuse.
Right. Like you said, the fact that Tom Brady the fact that the third grade soccer coach can't have his daughter as the lead striker for the Pee Wee League.
Yeah.
But the president can issue his own currency and do a deal with a guy in jail that he's going to pardon to be the exchange sponsor for his currency that he's going to legalize. And so, it's become more clear to me because I had lunch yesterday with a European defense contractor, big European defense contractor, and they're having they're going to have the biggest 10 years they've ever had. They're going to be, his company's a different company today than it was 3 months ago. And European markets are exploding higher. Europe's done, right? They're like, they get it. They got the message. We're out. We're 450 million people. They're 450 million people. America's now our enemy. We get it.
I think that's easily reversible, but sure. I mean, I think that's a very temporary phenomenon.
Well, my point is that there's a very valuable, I don't know if it was a trade, but there's an investment this year to be long European equities and long European defense contractors because of the Trump policy matrix, right? And I just wonder if the Trump shenanigans with CZ or Binance or stablecoin or Trump coin or whatever also maybe it forces a consolidation into Bitcoin, to the degree to which everything else, all the other shit coins become more, unattractive. Like why don't they want casino owners to own sports teams? It's not just a conflict of interest. They're like, well, if the casino owners own the sports teams, people are going to stop watching the sports and the sports team is going to become less valuable because people are not going to bother watching because they know the games are off, that it's rigged. It's a fixed outcome.
Yeah.
And so then the audience goes down and the value of the sports team goes down. Well, the reason you don't want conflict in the financial markets or the conflict in the crypto markets in this case is because if it's brazenly corrupt and conflicted, then the value of the entire market sector goes down or collapses. That's the implied risk. And it's like how many goofy things can you pile onto this before it doesn't necessarily collapse, but it's tolerance for, well, I'll say for things that are not Bitcoin collapses. So my point is that, if it was a good idea to buy BAE Systems or whatever, these European defense contractors, maybe you should be selling everything and selling all non-Bitcoin crypto and buying Bitcoin. People are going to follow GameStop. People don't want to mess with all the shenanigans, but they think crypto is going to last and that this is the best chance there's ever been to buy crypto. To Bitcoin, I'm sorry.
Yeah, but I mean, I just think that people need to understand how stablecoin, the whole stablecoin ecosystem, and what collateralizes the stablecoins is U.S. Treasuries, right? That's the collateral for the stablecoin is U.S. Treasuries, and the U.S. Treasury, although you can argue how independent that relationship is or isn't, but with Trump, it's definitely not fully independent. I mean, you can't, and so you have the executive branch, which now potentially could have much of their entire wealth essentially tied to what is being collateralized against the stablecoin, meaning that that how those bonds are priced and whatever the interest rates are, all of that can be tied back to the executive branch, which means the level of independence. Remember, the Fed's there to protect. The Fed's there as catastrophic insurance against something bad that happens. The real conflict is not now. The conflict is if something bad happens, okay, and the Fed needs to act. This is the part that I haven't seen one person write about this, but this is the most dangerous part of this whole thing. So the Fed is the catastrophic support. That's really what they're there for. That's why they're independent. That's why they can move markets if they have to. But they don't need to now, but if they have to. So if something really bad happens and the Fed has to take action, and that action that the Fed takes creates a price discrepancy in the stablecoin, in the collateral for the stablecoin. All right. In other words, it's not worth 1-to-1 anymore. It falls under parity. The collateral's worth less. Then the stablecoin goes down in value.
A la 2008. A la 2008.
A la 2008, when all the money funds that were worth $1, that were always worth $1, that were always pegged at $1, were no longer worth $1. And they were worth 95 cents.
Commercial paper funding facility.
That's right. 95 cents, 92 cents, 89 cents. But in this case, it could be even worse. And so you have an executive branch which has the potential to personally be bankrupt themselves, like to really hurt their wealth, okay, family wealth, all right, versus what the Fed needs to do to protect the economy for everybody out. Like that conflict is too great.
So now you're saying the Fed. Now you're saying there's an incentive to prevent the Fed from intervening to ensure stability in a catastrophic situation, because the actions required to ensure stability in a catastrophic situation could be very damaging to the wealth empire of the President of the United States.
How could that not be the case? Like if the Fed's role is truly, which I believe it is truly to provide catastrophic protection to preserve our economy, to preserve just life in the U.S. That's really what the Fed's job, like it was in 2008, like it was at other times when the Fed needs to step up. 2020, the Fed needs to step up. They make the moves necessary. That is why they're there. Everything else is just determined by the market. And if that goes in direct conflict with what the executive branch needs to happen with their underlying collateralized assets that support, what could be tens of billions of dollars or hundreds of billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars in stablecoin collateral, you have yourself a huge freaking issue of which you cannot explain that to the public at that point.
No.
Which sets off
to the public right now.
Which sets off, well, obviously, I mean, the Journal didn't write specifically about that. They skipped on that because they focused on the immediate ethics, which is what they should do right now, which is the ethical dilemma, the conflict. But if you look at the bigger picture, I think what's going to happen is a bunch of economists are going to come in and a bunch of market regulators and everybody else, and eventually somebody's going to say, well, what happens in this scenario? What happens when the Fed needs to do one thing and the executive branch doesn't want them to do that? And it comes down to personal wealth versus saving the economy. That's what's wrong with all this crap. And nobody says anything. And it's not freaking rocket science. It's not that difficult.
So basically, you're saying there's two risks that you're identifying. One is the short-term risk to the integrity of the crypto markets, which is well worn. But you're saying there's a second risk, which is the ability for the Federal Reserve to act freely to intervene in a catastrophic situation could be impaired by the direct harm that intervention might cause to the president of the United States.
Yeah. And
I mean, basically, the Fed is potentially less reliable as a safety net because of the conflict with the president of the United States.
Well, if you have a presidential family that launches worthless meme coins in an effort to enrich themselves and doesn't care about the conflicts there, where would they stop if there's a stablecoin crisis? And then you have CEOs like Ryan Cohn at GameStop taking, if I'm a shareholder of GameStop, do you think I want to be, did anybody invest in that company so that they could buy Bitcoin? I mean, obviously somebody did today, which makes no sense to me. But in general, why would anybody do that? Like, how ridiculous is that? You want to buy Bitcoin, go buy Bitcoin. You don't have to pay a premium. Why would you buy it through GameStop?
Could you say that with MicroStrategy as well?
Of course I said MicroStrategy. I hate Michael Saylor. The whole concept behind it, it's the biggest Ponzi scheme I've ever seen. He pulled it off for like $60 billion. I mean, it's insane.
Incredible.
But when that stock crashes and it trades underwater, it will take down the whole Bitcoin. That's why Bitcoin has a single point of failure. It's Michael Saylor. It's Michael Saylor.
Meaning, what would have to happen to Michael Saylor for Bitcoin to get powdered?
No, well, nothing. Bitcoin goes down, Michael Saylor gets powdered.
Got it. Oh, I see. Yeah, Michael
that's all.
Saylor has a single point of failure.
I mean,
yeah.
If it dropped below, let's say there's a number, I don't know what the number is, but there's a number. Let's say it's 55,000, whatever, 55, 60,000. At some point, it goes under. He goes underwater. When he goes underwater, what do? Who's gonna bail you out? On a Bitcoin play underwater. I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't.
Nobody.
It's
absolutely nobody.
Yeah. So anyway, those are the concerns I had today with respect to GameStop. Kind of this morning, and I sold puts in there yesterday. To be completely open, I figured, okay, stock's probably going to bounce up. I sold puts last night. It worked out. We covered on the opening for a nice little winner. So I'm not upset like that. I'm not crying about my position. I made money there today. I think that just listening to that story just kind of pissed me off because it's such a lame way to run a business. I would never invest in somebody like that. And then right after that, I read the Trump stablecoin thing and I'm like, how come nobody has a problem with this? How come when the Wall Street Journal writes this and nobody, it's not number one thing on everybody's, how could you not see the conflict here?
I think it's more that people have accepted the idea that Donald Trump is a criminal and a con artist, and they feel powerless to do anything about it.
No.
And so they've got to move through it. I mean, look at this stupid signal thing. Yet the Department of Defense, the Department of State, the Department of Treasury, the Central Intelligence Agency, the DNI, the NSA, the Vice President of the United States, all talking
of course
about sequencing, and nobody. It's like, what are you going to do?
But the only thing I can blame Trump for on that is just for the people he hired, not because he wasn't involved. But yes,
I'm just saying all of it together leads to a DC. When you're like, you know what? I'm going to have a ham sandwich because what am I going to do? And the only people that could do anything about this would either be a Republican majority, which isn't and won't.
Yeah, but Dylan,
or the Supreme Court or of some sort of crazy regulator, I guess.
Yeah, but what's funny is the signal thing. It bothers everybody because of the level of incompetence, irresponsibility, just how insane it is in this day and age that could happen. But that bothers everybody for all these reason, all those reasons. But for me, okay, I can write that off for just plain stupidity. I don't consider that to be a grift. Like, to me,
right, that's just dumb.
It's just dumb, right? I mean, as whether you think these guys are idiots or whatever, that was just dumb. And I mean, how do you put somebody on? Of course, that's a complete screw up. It's just dumb. But I don't consider it to be a grift. Nobody was grifting anybody. Nobody was truly grifting. Nobody was. It was definitely not intentional. It was stupid, not intentional. The idea that you're messing with the financial structure, the integrity of our financial structure, and adding conflicts to the foundation of what makes, of what keeps our economy going, and is the level of conflict added based on the introduction of stablecoins owned and run by the President of the United States is so freaking dangerous, and nobody's talking about that. That's a grift. That's what bothers me the most.
And I the only place I disagree with you, but I do disagree with you, is it's in the Wall Street. They are talking about it. It's in the Wall Street Journal. We're talking about it. It is being talked. I don't know why you say nobody's talking about it when it's being well documented.
99% of the discussions today are about about the messaging platform,
about the Signal app.
About the Signal app and the messaging,
the crypto scam.
Yeah, at 99% and is about that, and less than 1% is about the whole stablecoin business.
Crypto scam.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's why. It's only because of the amount of space that's being taken up on something that, was it stupid? Yes. Will it ever happen again? I doubt it. I mean, it was irresponsible. It was everything that everybody says. It was complete stupidity. But again, it wasn't a grift. And that's what, so it doesn't bother me that much.
Maybe they did the Signal thing on purpose to distract everybody from the crypto scam.
If you wanted to be the biggest idiot in the room, you couldn't have even thought of something that dumb. Like, you couldn't have made up that. If you wanted to, you couldn't have made that up. So no, that's not even possible.
All right.